This is Gemara and Beitzah Daf Lamed Ches, the learning for this week. The week of Sheva Brachas, the Simcha continues between the Chasa and Jitzi Bolag and Debbie Carniel. Emir Hashem, they should be able to build a Bais Naman Yisrael. Their wedding certainly is getting off on the right foot. The Sheva Brachas worth of Torah, the entire Chabura learning B'schusam, what an incredible schus. Emir Hashem, learning the entire Chabura should be a tremendous schus for the new couple as they embark on their new life together. As well as schus for Shem Shal Yisman and your Vedic woman, Shem Benita, Manu Vega Chaim V'Zar Shem Sim Reis Azarbas can handle. Ita Basim as Chaysa yourself in Mindel as a part to Shalei Shem as Nami, which Avigu Shechan Shmol Bentil Din Chaimizim Chaim and Sinali Bracha was Musa. Adin Ein of Hashem Minutes Viva Hegemior and Chilin and Sol and Sel who because Hashem Talzimich Lester. B'Sai Shar Chali Yisrael as well as Choshedu Yisrael Chaim the version Mirim Bas Yisakil Shen Das Shanamaka Mordechai Dava Shendel Sekidol Bas Dava Shendel. We're picking it up on the bottom of Lamed Zayin Amid Beis as we're closing in a few days left of this fabulous and fascinating Masechta. We are 5-6 lines from the bottom of Lamed Zayin Amid Beis. We finished yesterday with an answer. We answered an Epoch, a classical Gemara Teretz. You got to switch up the names. The Rav Yeshaya is one that says Ein Breira, Rav Yechanan is one that says Yesh Breira. And of course, in classical Gemara form, we're now going to have to understand if Rav Yechlan holds of Breira, does that work? Umisle, the Rav Yechlan Breira in the Gemara continues in this discussion of Breira. And let's take a moment to clarify what exactly does Breira mean, something that we've touched upon. Breira means it can be retroactively clarified that this is what happened. Meaning, right now, normally things go in time, things go straight, things don't go backwards. But la halacha, there are certain times we'll have to say, we're going to do something now, and this shows us that yesterday, this was the status. If I have a barrel, I could take out a cup on a Monday, and I could say that now I know retroactively back to Sunday when I became an owner in this barrel that this cup was mine. Even though when I became the owner on Sunday, I had ownership in every particle of this barrel. So I didn't really have ownership in this one cup. But if you hold a breira, what that means is when I eventually take that cup on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, retroactively, lima freya, it is clarified that that cup was always mine back to the beginning on Sunday. That's the basic of the concept of breira. So says the Gemara, does Rav Yechlan really agree to this concept of Breira of Amar Rav Yechlan, but V'amar Rav Asi Amar Rav Yechlan, 4 lines at the bottom. Brothers that divide an estate, what is their status of these brothers? They are considered purchasers. We'll see for why in a moment. That's why we know that there's halacha when you buy a piece of land, nothing is sold forever. Nothing la halacha and Torah. Land is never owned forever. Land is only owned for a maximum of 50 years. When Yovel comes, all land reverts back to its owner. So if brothers, when they divide their father's estate, what is their status? Is their status that they take over their father's possession, and therefore after 100 million years, it's still going to be theirs. If it was always part of their father's family estate, etc., it's not the son that the father purchased that it would go back to his purchaser. But a case where the family had an estate, the family has a land, so then the father is nifter, the sons inherit that land. What is the status of the land in the hands of the children? Says the Gemara, they are lekuchais, they are like purchasers. Each brother is as if he purchased from the other brothers from the larger estate, and therefore, when Yovel comes at year number 50, what are we going to do? Everything is going to go back, and you do a new division. So what do we see? We see very clearly that Rav Yechlan does not hold the breira. Because if Rav Yechlan held the breira, what would he say? It wouldn't be lekuchais. We would say each brother, when he takes his share, that retroactively is clarified. That's what his father gave him. For the fact that he's doing it now, as a purchaser, each one is buying it now. That means Rav Yechlan does not hold the breira. Answers the Gemara, or perhaps you'll tell me, maybe only when it comes to the purchasers, that's a din daraisa. That's why Rav Yechlan doesn't hold a breira. But maybe in a din darabanan he does hold a breira. But again, even that doesn't work. Does he even hold in the din of darabanan? Vatanya Ayoy. Ayoy says, and Rashi famously points out, who is Ayoy? Says Rashi, don't get confused. He's the shame of a chacham. That is a name. Vatanya Ayoy learned, Rav Yehuda Omer says Rav Yehuda, Ein Adam Masnal Shei Dvarim Ke'echad. Person is not allowed to make a Tanai on 2 different things at once. Elam Ba'chacham the Mizrach Eruv Elam Mizrach L'Mayrav Eruv Elam Mayrav. One is not sure. We are the Talmid Chacham, we're the Rav, the Gadol is coming on Shabbos to give a shir. He might be coming to the shul in the north, he might be coming to the shul in the south. Or maybe there's even two Talmidei Chacham coming. We're not sure at the moment. And therefore I want to be able to go attend the lecture. Problem is, it's outside my Tchum. So how do I go north or south? I put a Tchum in either, I kind of shviz, I put my challah, my loaf of bread, my bottle of wine in either the north or the south. The problem is, if I do it in the north, I can't go to the south. If I do it in the south, I can't go to the north. So it says Rav Yehuda, you cannot make a Tanai, you cannot make a condition on two things simultaneously. Rather, it's only one directional, says Rav Yehuda. It's either you can only make a conditional Erev, you can only make a Tanai either in the north or in the south. You have to choose one, you cannot do both. Ve'ilu lekan loy. You can't keep it open-ended. You can't say, if he comes here, I'm going here. If he comes here, I'm going there. That doesn't work. You can't potentially leave both ends open. Va'avinamba. And the Gemara says, we move over to today's Daf Lameches. The Gemara says, we pondered and we wondered, what exactly is this halacha? Ma'ishna lekan deloy. Why is one not allowed to say, I'm going to put an Erev over here, and I'm going to put an Erev over here, and I'm going to say, if he comes here, Meirev's here. If he comes here, Meirev's here. Why is he not allowed to do that? De ein breira, because we don't hold the concept of breira. Meaning, if you hold the breira, then what would happen? Then you would be allowed to put out two different eruvim, bottle of wine, challah, bottle of wine, challah, one in the north, one in the south. And then you'd be allowed to say, whenever the chacham comes, breira, we now retroactively clarified that was mine all along. That's where I wanted to kind of shvisa. I want to go north, not south, etc. So what's now? Must be we don't hold the breira. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Mizrach Hamayim Nami in breira. So why are you allowed to do in one direction? It should be the same issue, Mizrach Hamayim. Why? Meaning, if you can't do with two different, meaning the Gemara was thinking, if there's two different Talmidei Chacham coming, you're not allowed to say, I get to choose if I want to go north or south. Says the Gemara, but why if even one Talmidei Chacham is coming, and you don't know where he's coming, why does it help? It's going to be the same issue of Breira in order to allow you to make that Erev. Explains the Gemara, Amar Rav Yechlan, you know what's going on over here, Ukvar, the case is that Talmid Chacham already came, you just didn't know. So you don't need the concept of Breira. It's a little bit nitty gritty exactly how to explain this. Meaning, Breira goes back Lamafreya retroactively. Here, you don't need a concept of Breira, meaning why not? Because the Talmid Chacham is already in the shul. You just don't know. It's a lack of knowledge by you. So therefore, it's a regular Tanai, it's a regular condition that if we find out he's there, I'm going to go there. If we find out there, he's going to go there. But you don't need Breira at all. End of Beitzah. Explains the Gemara, Alma, let's say Rabbi Yechlan Breira. We see Rabbi Yechlan does not hold the Breira, even when it comes to Eruvei Techumen, which is the Din Derabanan. So we see even for the Derabanan, he doesn't hold the Breira. So we're back to square one. We started off today saying we're switching Rabbi Yechlan, Rabbi Yechanan, who holds the Breira, but Rabbi Yechlan as well seemingly doesn't hold the Breira. Says the Gemara, let's go back 4 lines down. Daf Lameches and Aleph Elohim lo tebach. Don't switch anything around. When did Rav Oisha not hold the breira? Bidaraisa. Avol bidarabanan islay. Rav Oisha holds the breira in dinei dirabanan, not in dinei daraisa. So meaning in Rav Yochanan we try to make this split. It didn't work, but in Rav Oisha we can make such a split. And the Gemara concludes Darshmar Zutra Alacha Rav Oisha. The halacha is like Rav Oisha, in that we're going to hold the breira only on Dinei Derabanan, not on Dinei Daraisa. Amar Shmuel, and the Gemara concludes, says Shmuel, Shar Shal Patam, the shar of a fattener, has a Tchom, are you correctly Koladim, any person who buys that item, he will be the one that defines the Tchom. Shal Sharaya of the shepherd, are you correctly Oisa Ear, anyone in that city, because anyone could potentially give it to that shepherd, and therefore that is where the Tchom goes like. So again, we're concluding the portion from yesterday, this fascinating sugya of breira, of retroactive clarification, going back and allowing something to be as if it was that way all along. We're saying we cannot explain that we have to split Rav Oisha and Rav Yechlan. Rather, we're going to go within Rav Oisha, does not hold the breira, but on a din daraisa, but on a din darabanan, which is what we says the Gemara. We do say Allah lamaisa that on dinei darabanan we will say breira. There will be such this concept of retroactive clarification. Says the Gemara 10 lines down. So one who borrows a kli from his friend in Erev Yantif, we said, then it gets the tchum of the borrower. Says the Gemara Pshita, of course. What's the chiddush? You only took it on Yantif, meaning you borrowed it on Erev Yantif. But you only physically took the item on Yantif itself. So the Havamina, I would have thought is Lavrushu Kukmi, it's not considered in your Rishos. Kamash Blan says the Mishnah, the chiddush, no, if you borrowed it, then it goes by your Rishos. And says the Gemara Masaleila, the Rav Yechon, the Sarai, Rav Yechon, Adam Rav Yechon, and speaks that explicitly like our Beitzah, even though you didn't pick it up till Yantif itself. It goes by the borrower because you borrowed it before Yantif. And we continued in the Mishnah and we said Yantif Karagli Amashil. But if you borrowed something on Yantif itself, then it goes by the Mashil, the lender, not by you, the borrower. So again, says Gemara Pshita, of course, we know again when does Tchum happen by Bin Hashmash, because we take that snapshot of the world and wherever every item is. So if I borrow something on Yantif, where was it on Erev Yantif? On Erev Yantif, it was in the hands of the mashal, in the hands of the borrower. So of course it goes by his the tchum. What's the chiddush? Answers the Gemara, you know what the chiddush is? The ragav v'shal minei. You borrow from him all the time. I would think you would think it's considered as if it's in his rishos. Kamash mala, no. Meaning, I always borrow items from Reuven. So I would think even if I didn't borrow from Reuven before Yantif, and I showed up and borrowed on Yantif, maybe the mere fact that I always borrow is enough to consider it as if it's in my rishos. Kamash Malan, no, Meimer Amar, we're going to say, Dilma Mishkach Inish Achrina Vasal V'Shal Minei. How do you know? It's true you always borrow from Reuven, but you never know. Maybe you'll bump into Shimon on the way, and you'll borrow from Shimon, and therefore it goes practically, when did you borrow it? If you borrowed it on Yantif, then it doesn't go by the borrower's tchum, but rather by the lender, and that's the chiddush. It's quite a novelty. And similarly, we said if a woman borrows from her friend, and what does she borrow? Let's be precise. We said she's cooking something. She borrows water and salt and dough and flour and all these different items. Says the Mishnah, it goes by both of you. It goes by me, well, not me, the woman, but it goes by the woman, and it goes by the person she borrowed, because she has some ingredients. The person lent her some ingredients. So the tchum of the final product of this challah goes by the person who lends the items and by the person who baked the challah. Says the Gemara, Kisalik Rav Abba, when Rav Abba went up there to Yisrael Amar, he said the following tefillah: Yeh Rav, it should be your will, Kadosh Baruch Hashem, the Ema Milsa, the Tkabel. I should say something that is accepted. I want my teachings, I want my Torah to be accepted. Hidamet Hashem. Kisalik, when he went up, Rav Yechon, Rav Chanina bar Papi, Rav Zeir, he finds three Gedailim, Rav Yechon, Rav Chanina bar Papi, and Rav Zeir. They're sitting. Va'amri lei, and they said, Rav Avu, Rav Shimon Pazi, Rav Yitzchak Nafcha. Excuse me. And some say it was these three Gedailim. It was Rav Avu, Rav Shimon Pazi, and Rav Yitzchak Nafcha. V'yasvi v'kamri. They were sitting and they were saying. They were saying the halacha, like we said in the Mishnah, that if someone borrows an item, the joint dough, the challah goes by both people's tchum, not only by the person that created the dough. And on this, asked Rav Abba, saying, they all asked, why is it? Why is it true that this challah, this goes by both of us, goes by the person who made it, goes by the borrower? It's a joint ownership bread. They said, why? Why is that true? I borrowed this water and salt, and I have flour. The flour is the ikar. So your water and salt should be bottled, should be null and void to my flour, and the whole tchum should go by my feet. Why are you relevant at all? That was the question these Gedalim were sitting and discussing. Amrlu Rav Abba, so Rav Abba went and he's visiting and he introduces an answer as we turn over to Lamachasam Beis. Hare, says Rav Abba, 1 second. If I have a kaf, I have one measurement of flour, and you have 10 measurements of flour, of wheat. Shalchaver of your friend. If my one measurement mixes with your 10 measurements, can you go and take your now 11 measurements, eat it all, and be happy? Why are you happy? Because you got an extra measurement. Very simple. My cup of water falls into your bottle of water. You're going to go and drink the whole bottle of water, have an extra cup, and say, it's bottle, it's not here, it's all mine. You can't do that. V'chadi. That was Rav Abba's kasha, meaning they were sitting and discussing why. Why is the tchum go by both of them? It should be batal. Says Rav Abba, batal. This isn't a halachic question. This is an ownership. This is who owns the item. Who owns the item in the tchum? We both own the item, so tchum should go by both. Just like if my item will get mixed with your item, you can't just go and consume the whole thing and say, oh, it's now all mine. It's batal. Of course not. What happened? They laughed at him. He doesn't know why. They laughed at him. Amrlu Rav Abba says, Kol tichu shakli. Have you taken your shirts? They laughed at him again. He couldn't understand. What did I say wrong? I have a beautiful taina. Amar Rav Aishia, end of story. Now says the Gemara, let's analyze this story. Amar Rav Aishia, shaber avid achichu alei. It was good they laughed at him. Rav Abba, you think you had a good question? You think you had a good idea that if your item gets mixed with your friend's item, your friend can sit and eat it all and be happy? I'll tell you why they were laughing at you. Why did you ask? Look at the top line. What was the top line? Kav chitin basara kavir chitin. It was chitin and chitin was like with like. Why did you ask a case of like with like? Why didn't you ask them a case of chitin with barley? Why not? You know why not, says Rav Aishia. I'll tell you why not. Because then it would be like with not like. And what's the halacha of like with not like? And the halacha is like with not like is batal. So says Rav Aishia, let me explain something. You asked from what? Wheat to wheat. Why did you not ask wheat to barley? Because seemingly you knew that if you asked wheat to barley, it wouldn't be a question. Because why? Because then it would be batal, and then you would be able to eat it. So similarly, chita b'chita nami, even wheat and wheat, there are opinions that hold that it's batal. Nei del Rav Yehuda like batal, Rabbanim mitzah batal. So explains Rav Aishia, you know why they were laughing at you? Because your question was ridiculous. You asked from wheat to wheat. Why do you not ask wheat to barley? Because there you would have agreed that there's a din of bittul, that it would be null and void. He could eat all your items. What do you mean? The Rabbanan hold even wheat with wheat is bittul. Amarli Rav Safra says back to Rav Aishia, Moshe, Shaber Kamrit, what are you saying? Moshe is a word of it's like a guzma, it's an exaggeration. Moshe, what are you talking about? Did you not hear that which Rav Chia bar Ketosfa said in the name of Rav? If you go and you take rocks out of your friend's granary, you have to pay him the value of wheat. To pay in the value of wheat, I took racks. You know why? Alma kila chas, you have to fill his void. When we view what you took from someone else, it's not the physical item you took. If you have a big barrel, a big bucket, bowl, barrel, whatever it is, of wheat, inside has some garbage, some refuse, some strayers, some rocks. When you sell that wheat, the rocks go with it. So if I go and I pick out those rocks, what I effectively take out, wheat. It makes no difference because when you sell it, it all goes all together. So when you would have to pay him back, what do you pay him? You would have to pay him back wheat. The mere being, because when you would sell it, it would all go together. And the way we view it is kila chas, you have to fill his void. So to over here, you have to fill his void. Meaning, if your item got mixed with your friend's item, and your friend went and ate the whole thing, of course he'd have to pay you back. There's no bittul. You can't say bittul over here. You have to fill his void. You took his item. So that is what Rav Abba's question was. So he's asking back to Rav Aishia, what are you saying that it was good they laughed at him? It's not true. He had a beautiful fundamental question. So now when we go back to our question, why they were asking, then when I have of an item which I borrow from someone, the Mishnah taught the tchum goes by everyone. They asked, why does it go by everyone? It should be batal. Batal, of course not. You can't be mevatel ownership. You can't make ownership null and void. It's physically owned by the both of us. Amar le Abaye lo shanale mar be moment she's lo tavan le moment she in lo tavim. Says Abaye back 1 second. What's going on over here? Says Abaye to Rav Safra. Again, Rav Safra just asked. Rav Safra said that when you take out the rocks, you're going to have to replace it with wheat. Says Abaye back to him, there's no difference between items that have something that you could claim, like the case of the pebbles. You could bring him to Bezdin over that. What's mamin she'ein lo tavim in our case? In our case, you borrowed from me the water and the salt. I lent it to you. Whose is it right now? It's not mine anymore. It's yours because you borrowed it. That was their question. Again, let's go back. When I borrow something from you, whose tchum should it go like? All from me, because I am the sole owner. You're asking me, what do you mean? In a case of pebbles and flour, and you take out the pebbles, you got to pay back the whole thing. Shkaya, because over there you can take him to Bezdin. But in our case, I lent it to you, I gave it to you, it's yours. Amar Lei, so Rav Safra responds back, what you're telling me, Rav Chisda, I have a different problem. Rav Chisda said, Nevela batla b'shchuta, a nevela is batal in a shchuta, nevela is a carcass, a shchuta is a no shechta to eat. Lefi she'ef shel shchuta shetas a nevela, a shchuta cannot become a nevela. If I shecht an animal, it's kosher. Something that's kosher cannot be undone and become nevela, become unkosher. It could become something else, but it can't become into a nevela. Because it is effectively kosher. You can't take something kosher and make it unkosher. However, shchuta inoi betela b'nevela. But in the opposite, if I have one piece of shechten meat and that falls into nevela, it's not batal. Why? Because a nevela could become a shchuta. Now, what exactly does that mean? It obviously doesn't mean a nevela could become a shchuta, because once it's a nevela, the carcass is dead, and a dead carcass obviously cannot become a shchuta. So, what exactly does this mean? Let's take a moment. We're really going to conclude with this. Let's see Rashi. Rashi over here, it's a bit of a lengthy Rashi. We're just going to see the end of the parts of the Rashi. Rashi, Rashi says, he quotes the rule of Menachos that we're coming from, min b'minai loy batal, min b'she'ena minai is batal. That's the basic rule, that like with like, min b'minai does not be mevatel, but like with unlike is mevatel. And on this, Rav Chia learned the following. Nevela u'shchilta betula zu bezu. One is a batal and the other. L'Rav Yehuda. Vashmi Rav Chia. When is it batal? That's the rule. When something could be like the other item, that's when it's called a min b'she'enai minai, and that's when it's going to be batal. Avol, however, if it can't be like the other one, if it's possible to be like it, if I could turn it into you, then min b'she'enai minayu, then it's considered two different entities, ubatal. Now, it's a bit counterintuitive, that's the difficulty here, because we're saying, if you could become the other item, then it's min b'she'enai minai, then it's like with not like, and then it's going to be batal. Ruba zinu go by the Rav demavshal aliyas kemurat v'chaysav avimin b'minai v'iloi avimin b'she'enai minai. And therefore he explains the case. We'll just read this Rashi a little bit quicker. This is the case the Gemara just quoted, that if I have Concise nevela that mixes with a lot of shchuta, it's going to be batal. As if it's not there. Again, I have a little bit of not kosher meat that falls into a lot of kosher meat. And that's not the point that we need. You're not going to be tamei. Nevela is tamei, shechten meat is not tamei. The min b'she'enai mineu, because it's two different items. The avshel is shchuta, liyas amavata, liyas metamei b'mag v'masik and nevela. Once it is shechted, it cannot be the level of mikabel toma, and that's the point the Gemara is honing in on, the level of mikabel toma, just like a nevela. It's impossible because it's already shechted, so it can't have that same level of permeability and susceptibility to toma. Avol shchuta shenisari b'nevela. What about the other way? I have a big vat of nevela, which is of course all mikabel toma, and I have one piece of kosher meat that falls in. The ruba nevela. The shchuta meat is not bottled and therefore becomes tamei vade lisrev tumal magai, which the difference would be you then could burn it, because we know saying that's tamei you let it burn. Such critical words Rashi says. What did the Gemara mean that the nevela could become the shchuta? Doesn't mean a nevela could become a shchuta, because a nevela is a dead carcass. A shchuta is an animal that was shechted. Says Rashi, it means that it becomes tahar like the shchuta. Why? When it gets smelly, then it's no longer going to be called nevela, and that is what the Gemara means, that the nevela could become the shchuta. Now let's finish up. Says the Gemara, hachanami. So to bayas, what can we say? If the nevela meat had an owner, it would not become batal, and the larger part of the shchuta. You can't say that. And therefore, that was Rav Safra's question back to Abaya based on this din of Rav Chisda. V'chitema, but maybe you'll tell me, Achanami, V'tani, we learned in a Braisa, Mevich Menuri, Chavsei Avker Kainim Shvisa, Avishin Labailim. Even without an owner, an ownerless item, Chavsei Avker gets a Shvisa, gets a 2,000 Amos, gets a Tchuman Shabbos. Toimin, Kamishesh Labailim, as if it has an owner. So the Gemara is stuck, and therefore comes like Abaye, and Abaye says, Amar Le, Mikam Adamis Isur Lememayna, Isura Batal Memayna Loi Batal. Says Abaye, which is really the fundamental idea that we've been grappling with from the top of the Amud, that is Isur could be Batal. But when it comes to Bailos, when it comes to an ownership, that cannot be Batal, and that is the reason why they were laughing. That is the reason why the ownership of the water and the salt cannot be batal. It can't be batal because it's an ownership. And therefore, when it comes to the tchum, it should go by both of them. And now the Gemara says, we now want to know why is the reason. At the end of the day, we have finished the whole discussion. The discussion with Rav Abba, he had a taina, he had an answer, why they laughed at him, because they didn't understand why the tchum should go by both of them. And now we understand it. We understand that the rules of bittul do not apply over here. The rules of bittul do not apply over here because there's an ownership. And whenever you have an ownership, there is no bittul. And therefore, this bread goes by both of them. But now the Gemara gives 3 different reasons. Are really going to this tomorrow. What is practically the reason? V'taima mai. Abaye Amar, well, let's see the first one. You know why the bailis of the tchum goes by both of them. Abaye says the first answer, Rav didn't give another answer, and we'll pick up from here tomorrow, explaining the 3 reasons why practically this loaf of bread, which has salt and water from one person and flour from another, has the tchum from both of them.